Welcome back to the Business Leaders of America podcast, where business leaders come to share their advice and journeys to success with existing and emerging leaders of America. Join us as we delve into the minds of these accomplished individuals, uncovering the strategies and insights that have propelled them to the top. Whether you're an established leader or an emerging force in the business world, this podcast is your go-to source for the knowledge and inspiration needed to navigate the dynamic landscape of American business. Now, here's your host, Dylan Bloyd.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Business Leaders of America podcast. Today, we have the privilege of speaking with Brian Fitzpatrick, a distinguished CEO and executive leader with over 25 years of experience in software and platform companies. Brian is the CEO and Chairman of Qredible, the world's first enterprise quality management ecosystem purpose-built for high-risk industries like cannabis, CBD, and nutraceuticals. Brian's exceptional leadership has been acknowledged with numerous awards, including being twice named a finalist of the Entrepreneur of the Year Philadelphia region, a finalist for the Markham Innovator of the Year Award, and receiving SmartCEO's Voltage Award as a recognized leader in technology. Beyond his professional achievements, Brian is passionate about developing and mentoring emerging leaders, continually advancing his company's culture, and fostering innovation by encouraging creativity and new ideas. In today's episode, we'll explore Brian's journey, the mission and impact of Qredible, and its insights on leadership, innovation, and the future of high-risk industries. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, excited to get to speak with you about this. So, before we get going, could you please give us a brief intro on yourself and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. Well, I started out my tech career with a small company, and I'm kidding about that. It was Electronic Data Systems. At the time was the second largest tech company in the world. And I was one, probably about 32,000 employees at the time.
Wow.
It was the second largest tech company, as I said, second to IBM. And it was a great opportunity because I got a lot of great formal training on software development, life cycles, and sales training, and anything that they offered, I took advantage of. And it was really, from there, I was very successful as a sales performer there. I was one of the top sales performers in the country for the division I was in. But, selling $185 million worth of business for a large tech company, a $32 billion tech company, is sort of like taking a pebble and throwing it in the ocean. You don't really see the effect. You don't see the ripple. So I really was very intrigued to go into an entrepreneurial environment in my 20s. And I started with a small entrepreneurial firm where I came as an equity partner. And we grew that business, and that was in the mortgage tech space. And that's sort of where I pivoted my career to be more vertically oriented into mortgage technology and financial technology. And we grew that business over a period of about 3 or 4 years, from nothing to about $35 million in recurring revenue, which we'll call SaaS revenue today, even though that was like the early days of SaaS. And I really caught the bug. I mean, it was just so exciting because every account you sold, you'd see a big wave. Well, not just a little ripple. It was like a big wave, and you saw more people coming on board. And it was just exciting to be part of the executive team that was building a business. And then we exited. We sold that business to a large financial strategic. And then I had the bug, and that was it. And then I went and took over and joined a small group and really helped as a founding member of a small software company in Jacksonville, Florida. Again, we repeated the same thing. We just grew that business up. We sold it to a strategic, and then did it again. So and that, which was my last company, which we just exited in 2020 timeframe.
Okay.
And that was exciting. We sold that to a large private equity. That was a company that was negative, $6 million in net worth. And all these businesses, by the way, have had what I call, entrepreneurial near-death experiences, that you never know whether you're going to make payroll the next week. But all three of these businesses have had successful outcomes. And I've learned a lot along the way. I've been a CEO since I was about 32 years old. And Had no idea what I was doing at the time. So learned a lot along the way. But this is my fourth software company, Qredible. And we're doing exciting things. So this is the first one, by the way, that where I left that mortgage tech vertical, and I'm in the cannabis, CBD, nutraceutical space, and regardless of what my 91-year-old mother says, she tells her friends I'm in the weed business, which I'm really not.
No.
Yes, I happen to sell to companies that are selling that, but that's not really the business I'm in.
Exactly. No, absolutely. No, that's incredible. I mean, seems like, those are probably the most, greatest feelings when you are able to start some or work with somewhere where you happen to do everything from the beginning and then the payoff at the very end compared to being already successful and then selling. I'm sure the self-satisfaction of that is great as well, right?
It really is. It's so rewarding. I mean, stressful. Don't get me wrong. I mean,
Right.
this is the entrepreneurial lifestyle is not for everyone because it's been a series of ups and downs, but extremely rewarding.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, congratulations on your success. That is great. And I'm excited to speak more about Qredible. So, can you explain the mission of Qredible and how it's transforming the safety and compliance of high risk industries, like you mentioned, like cannabis, CBD, and nutraceuticals?
Sure. Well, it's interesting. I'm always interested in what I call blue ocean opportunities. And all of my companies have been about blue ocean opportunities. So while everybody's fighting it out in the red ocean, which means they're doing things sort of the same old way,
Yeah.
I'm looking for, okay, what's the problem that needs to be solved? And how do we utilize advanced technologies to do it different and create a better mousetrap, if you will? So, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we create new categories, because to create a new category like Uber or Airbnb or one of those companies takes billions of dollars, right? So this is not a new category. This is going into an existing category and really finding what the problem is. So the problem that I saw, and by the way, I had to reinvent myself into a new career in my 50s of CBD, cannabis, and hemp. And it's not like I was a marijuana user or I'd never really used those products before. But what I was seeing is an opportunity to establish trust and transparency and create, really foster safety in an industry that was going to be really ballooning, very nascent industry that's going to be growing. And in any industry that's ballooning or growing or creating its maturity, I saw it even in the mortgage world, where, I mean, look what happened in the mortgage and real estate world in 2008.
Right.
And that was something, by the way, that I had sort of been talking about and predicting and seeing.
Really?
And I actually and I created a tech company to be there when it happened.
Wow.
And sort of this is what I mean by blue ocean opportunities. And that's really the opportunity here at Qredible, is to establish trust and transparency, to help companies to ensure product quality and safety, and to facilitate that environment of safe operations through commerce and operations utilizing advanced technologies. Because what I started saying 3-4 years ago when we started this concept of Qredible was that we're going to see headlines. Those headlines are all going to be about the dangers and the lack of safety, because when these industries grow, they grow fast. And it's immature. So we're lacking lots of standards, we're lacking lots of regulations, and that's really why we created Qredible. So our mission is to establish safety, trust, and transparency in the industry.
Okay. So when you saw that first developing, you just kind of had a prediction that there's going to be, with it growing as fast as it has, obviously with legalization, everything occurring, did you just see that there was going to be regulation issues for companies and that you guys kind of built that to help them get through? Is that kind of what this is?
Absolutely. And it's not because I'm like this, I can tell the future,
Of course. Yeah.
I'm clairvoyant.
You've just done it long enough, right?
And it's not even because I'm that brilliant.
Right.
The fact of the matter is that if you look at history and you look at industries that are just starting out, and especially, these ones that were formerly illegal, you realize that there's no precedence. There's no precedence for safety. There's no precedence for these things. So it's going to naturally go through a very rough time. So the prediction was taking something I experienced before in another industry, you know, and it's, you know, nobody was dying from, you know, from bad quality in mortgages,
Yeah.
but people can die in this industry from lack of safety, lack of quality in this industry. And we're going to see those headlines. So it was really just about, you know, understanding very basic principles of seeing that nascent industries create nascent problems and opportunities.
Okay, that definitely makes sense. What were some of the biggest challenges you've encountered while building Qredible, and how have you overcome them? Is it when you first established it, were you having difficulties bringing companies in, or were they kind of coming to you right away because of the issues they probably were encountering?
Well, it's a great question. I can tell you that because, you know, we're doing something new in a new industry. You know, you have this thesis of the business, right? And
Right.
the original thesis of the business was that companies would want to be transparent about safety and quality. They'd want to jump into a digital registry and validate their brands. And that was the original thesis of Qredible. We were going to be the world's first digital registry for quality vetted and verified brands. And when you would talk to brands about it, they're like, hey, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. But when it came down to swiping the credit card, they, you know, sort of scratch their head and they're like, yeah, but we've got some other issues we got to resolve first. And, you know, before we do that, and maybe we're not ready for that, you know, and this is the problem with not just starting a new business, but when you start businesses like I have in the past, where you're going after something that nobody's really done before in the way we're doing it, you know, you've got to really move quickly. You have to adjust fast. Otherwise, you're going to be standing there, you know, trying to sell something that nobody's buying. So the problem that we really had was that the CBD and cannabis industry was not ready for this because they were dealing with lots of issues. They were dealing with increased costs. And everybody thinks, oh, wow, this is like this cannabis industry is everybody's making money hand over fist. I can tell you, when you get in it, these companies are struggling.
Yeah.
They're struggling because they've got compliance challenges. They've got, you know, market access restrictions, you know, things that they've got tax problems. I mean, there's something called 280E where, you know, because cannabis is federally illegal, they can't take advantage of things like writing off expenses against their taxes. So 100% of their revenue is taxable, right? So, you know, they've got a lot of challenges. So it's not a matter of, you know, are these companies trying to, you know, make people sick? Are they trying to do all the wrong things? No, I've met very good owner operators that are just dealing with a lot of different issues. So what happened was the original thesis had to modify. So we had to modify it and say, hey, you know what? We need to turn this technology first internal and give these companies technology that will help them reduce the cost of compliance, that'll help them do their business better through automation. And then through that, we build the digital registry and the ecosystem. And that's sort of the way we evolved. But that's a good lesson in entrepreneurship that I've learned, is that you got to be able to move, you know, based on how the market's responding. If you just stay still, you're going to get run over.
Have you dealt with a lot of competition now that you guys have been going? Have other companies kind of come into the game and try to do kind of what you guys are doing?
Well, there's competition out there, but it's fragmented. There are still knife fighting over in the red ocean, right?
Okay.
So there's little pieces and parts of what we do that are being done by other companies, but you know, nobody has the ecosystem. Nobody has thought through the use of advanced blockchain and machine learning and artificial intelligence and implementing it the way we have through an ecosystem that has been fully effective. So you could piece together everything the Qredible platform does by, you know, tying in and spaghetti coding, integrating all those different, you know, solutions, or, you know, you can get it all in one clear ecosystem where, and when I say ecosystem, by the way, it's always confusing. You know, what do you mean by that?
Right.
When I talk about ecosystem, I'm talking about a system where everybody benefits within the supply chain from the technology. So
Okay.
your banking relationship, for example, will have full transparency and be able to see the types of things that they need to see to be compliant. So they're not overburdening the CBD company, for example, to get lab reports and information that they keep, sort of duck biting these people for,
Right.
little things here and there. Well, if you're in the Qredible ecosystem, you're compliant, and that information is already served up to your trading partners. You just have to enable them to view that. So that's a great example of how the technology through the ecosystem comes together to empower everybody in the supply chain and reduce the cost of compliance to everybody.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. Do you have an example that you can share that highlights the importance of having, these robust regulatory and compliance measures in place, and maybe
Oh,
some success stories?
absolutely. It's funny. It's when I first started talking about this, I said, you're going to see the headlines. I keep telling people, investors, you're going to see the headlines, and the headlines are like now flooding through. So,
Right.
there's the problem is in the cannabis world, like CBD world is federally regulated through something called the Farm Bill, right?
Okay.
And it's a little outdated, and of course, everybody's finding loopholes and how to work around that. But then when you get to the marijuana industry is not federally regulated because it's not federally legal. So you've got all these different states that have either gone legal medical or legal recreational, but each state has its own idea of what standards should be. So laboratory testing, for example, is a significant issue. Regardless of, it depends on what state you're in, depends on what contaminants they're looking for, what kind of things they're tracking, right? So what's happened is, let's just take, the medical world, for example. Some of the recent news in the medical world, in Maine, a recent study in the Maine's Office of Cannabis Policy found that 42% of tested cannabis samples contain contaminants that would have prohibited their sale in the recreational market. So this includes they're finding pesticides, heavy metals, yeast, and mold. Great example is they actually found a pesticide in medical cannabis, which releases cyanide gas when combusted and can cause a range of mild to severe effects when inhaled. So people automatically think, oh, it's medical cannabis, it's safe, right? We're good to go. That's not necessarily true. So that's medical. Now take recreational, for example, right? So I don't know if you've been following, but last week the Los Angeles Times, reported a significant problem with California cannabis that revealed significant concerns about regarding consumer safety all around uncovered hazardous pesticide contamination in legal cannabis, right? So everybody just automatically assumes, and I have a quick story to tell. I was recently went to a township hearing on cannabis. I'd never been to one. And I said, well, I want to hear what people have to say. Right? So I don't even live in that town. So I'm sitting in the, in the back with an investor of ours that actually lives in the town and with me. And we're sitting there and, somebody stands up and says, look, I don't know if this is safe for our kids. I don't know if this is safe for the community and blah, blah, blah. And the township solicitor says, well, it's absolutely safe. There's lab reports. These things all have to go through labs. There's track and trace systems. Well, let me tell you something about those two things. All right. First of all, the lab report can be falsified and is falsified in this industry. That's why we created a blockchain repository that connects directly to the lab, so you can't monkey with the results. Right. So now, let's put it this way. If I handed you a lab report that was PDF, right? You could take that PDF lab report and you can change it to be whatever you want through an Adobe PDF generator. Editor. So, that's actually happening. So people are, a lot of what's happening in the industry is they're upping the THC levels and they're changing that. And we also know that the lack of lab standards, we don't even know what the state's testing for, whether it's correct. So that's number one. Number two, track and trace. Everybody talks about, well, states require track and trace technology, through system like Metric or some type of seed to sale track and trace. Well, many people don't realize that the reason the states put those in place is because they want to know where the revenue is. They want to know when it came from the farm and then went to be created in an end product, where that product is going, because that's how they get their revenue. Right. So it really has very little or nothing to do about safety. So those are examples of what we're trying to solve. And by working with companies to create good manufacturing practices and put those into play through the technology, right? And put in place blockchain technology standards. And so we're working with a lot of standards bodies, ASTM. We're working with the Cannabis Standards Alliance of Canada. They're a client of ours now. We're working with a nonprofit cannabis standards organization here in the U.S. so that they could utilize our technology for driving those standards and safety.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that. Has it been difficult staying up with all of the latest trends and advancements, especially in all of the different states that are legal on different levels, right? Has that been difficult for Qredible to be able to stay on top of all the trends and advancements in technology and business?
Well, it's a great question, but we have this little friend called AI that helps us to do that, right? So, it's funny, when we first started building these compliance engines, AI technology was still in its advancement. I mean, it's still in its early infancy stage,
right.
But we created like I'm used to doing in other industries, I created a compliance engine, right? So, you put in your search and you ask it the question. And then I looked at it and I said, what are we doing? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, we could actually use machine learning. I have an intense background in machine learning in my former industries. I mean, I had to go out of the country to find a great machine learning industry for my last company. So we literally, dropped 10 and we said, okay, we're going to punt on this process. And what we're going to do is we're going to reformulate using AI. So in doing that, it enabled us to create robotic process automation that would go out and grab the rules and regs, and constantly comb and then pull those into the machine learning and AI engines and interpret those in plain language. So is it a big job? Well, it's a big job for technology if you don't know what you're doing, right? Qredible has created literally a world-class engine using machine learning and artificial intelligence to help us and our customers stay up on all of these changing rules and regs. So, for example, what's the labeling requirement for cannabis products in Nevada, right? So funny, you're from Nevada, and one of the folks that we talked to quite a bit is a very talented consultant who was formerly the Nevada Cannabis Commissioner.
Awesome.
And so in talking to folks like that, in learning, how to get access to those rules and regs, because they're all online, and then amassing that through robotic process automation, machine learning, and AI has given us the ability to stay up to date with lots of information.
Okay. So when businesses are using Qredible, is there like a software in there that gives them updates? Do they search the rules and regulations themselves? How does that work?
Yeah. So basically, if you're in Qredible, if you're you like how I did that, Incredible.
I did. Yeah, that was great.
But if you're a member, you could essentially set yourself up for various posts. So if I'm in the state of New Jersey and I'm mainly interested in updated rules and regs only in New Jersey, you can tweak the engine to say, okay, let me know about anything new that's coming up. And so you'll get bulletin updates, you'll get however you want to be alerted, whether it's text or email. But you can also at any time go in and, just like you would chat GPT, you can ask the system, give me the specifics on edibles, on labeling of edibles in the state of New Jersey. And you'll get those updates. So you can set up automated reminders or posts, you let me know if something changes in this area, or you can on demand ask the engine to tell you what's going on.
Gotcha. No, that's incredible. See how I did it back to you?
Yeah, see,
Yeah,
it's catchy.
exactly. It is. So let's say it does become legal federally. Would Qredible have to pivot a lot in everything that they're doing, or would it pretty much stay the same, being that it's still state to state? But if it became federally legal, what would Qredible need to do to stay doing what they're doing now?
Well, it's a great question because, a lot of investors, when we're talking to investors and raising our funds,
Hmm.
they think that's the threat. They
Right.
say, oh, well, if it goes federally legal, then Credible's done, right? Credible's
Hmm.
out of business. Like, no. I mean,
Right.
if you look at the pharmaceutical industry, which is highly regulated, I
Yes.
mean, look at all the software companies that have made money.
Hmm.
We are positioning ourselves to be there, right? And to get these standards in place and to monitor these state regulations so that we are well positioned for the federal standards. Because when those federal standards come in, when the rule of law, right,
Yeah.
becomes more intense and the pendulum swings. Now, I always talked about that in the mortgage industry, and I said to a lot of CEOs in the mortgage industry that said, well, why do we have to do this? Why do I need your technology? I said, because when the pendulum swings,
Hmm.
right, and the federal regulators get involved, okay, there's going to be more regulation than you will know how to even implement.
Yes.
And it will be crushing to you from a consumer, excuse me, from a cost perspective.
Mm.
And truly, that's what happened. So we are actually looking forward to that moment, because when
Gotcha.
that moment happens, we move from nice to have to need to have.
Hmm.
And right now, I mean, it's almost like we're doing business with 42 different countries, because
Yes.
in every single state, it's a different requirement. And then when you overlay the federal requirements, it becomes even more intense. So I'm praying for the day that we see that,
Yeah.
because it's not only good for our business, but quite frankly, it is imperative to consumer health and safety.
Hmm. No, thank you for touching on that. That was great. And hopefully, yeah, it does happen soon, and that's better for your business and better for everyone else as well, the businesses and everything. So, what are your aspirations for the future of Qredible and other ventures that you're involved in?
Well, it's interesting. People have always assumed when I've started companies, it's just to make a lot of money,
Mm.
and money has never been my driving factor, right? Money, comes if you do everything right, right?
Hmm.
It sort of trails behind. In every industry, in every company that I've ever sort of started, the vision and the mission is so critical to me that I'm very sincere about driving safety and health and making this a better industry, a safer industry. So, what my goal is of any business is to build optionality, okay,
Hmm.
which means people say, "Oh, are you going to sell it? Are you going to go public? Are you going?"
Hmm.
And the answer is, I don't know. I,
Right.
I really don't know. What the goal of every business is: achieve your vision and mission and make an impact
Mm.
on the industry that you serve. Okay, you have to do that, and I am very sincere about making a major impact in the industry, because when we do that, that means our technology company will succeed, and when our technology company is successful, then we have optionality.
Hmm.
And that optionality is, are we going to go public? Maybe.
Right.
Are you going to sell to a strategic? Maybe. Are you
Yeah.
going to take some chips off the table and sell to a private equity? Maybe. It's Here's the difference. I want all those options available
Hmm.
to me.
Yes.
And every good company will have all of those options available to. So my aspirations for the company is to really fulfill its mission, is to make this industry safer and better. Okay, that's number one. Number two is to see the people that have helped me start Qredible and helped me grow Qredible, the families associated with those individuals, to be successful,
Hmm.
to really have something meaningful at the end where they feel like they've fulfilled something great and it's financially rewarding to them in the end. And lastly, after my fourth software company, I hope to not be building a fifth,
Right.
because these take a lot out of you.
Yes.
So maybe my goal, my real aspirations after we successfully exit from Qredible one day, is to help young entrepreneurs, and I've already started that goal, because I remember, and I wasn't kidding when I said I was 32-year-old CEO and I didn't know what I didn't know. And I made a lot of mistakes, but it was older people around me that I was able to benefit from their wisdom. I asked a lot of questions. I tagged on to a lot of people. And I would love, I lecture in universities today, in business schools, and I give my time to young entrepreneurs to try to help them out, because they're the future of American business. They're the future of world business. And I think that, I think we're all called to give back, and providing incubator, and not just an incubator and advice, but providing access to capital, providing the development methodologies and systems, and the financial methodologies and systems that have proven to work. Why? How have they proven to work? Well, because I made mistakes in the past, right? and it's learning from those mistakes and fine tuning the process and bringing the benefit of that wisdom to young entrepreneurs is really what I aspire to do next.
No, absolutely. I think that is incredible that you're doing that. And I hope everyone all the listeners are paying attention to this, because even what you said early on, I think it's so important to not focus on the money. I think that a lot of young entrepreneurs, and you probably experienced this a bunch, is people are always focusing on the money instead of focusing on producing a great service or product, right? So I think that is a great point, and I hope all the listeners are paying attention. And that brings me to, how can listeners connect with you and learn more about Qredible, and then learn more how they can, learn more about how they can learn from the amazing information that you have to share, and not make the same mistakes that you have made.
Sure. Well, I'm always open to networking. You can find me on LinkedIn. Simply look up Brian Fitzpatrick or Qredible. So I urge you to connect with Qredible and follow Qredible, Qredible, which you can find at qredible.com. And you can connect through all of our social media channels. We're very active. We have a podcast of our own, follow us there. I have a blog I just started, which is really about life lessons. It's a little bit more on the personal side of business and life. That's called Fits on Life. So sign up for our newsletter. And I'm simply Brian, Brian, at qredible.com, if you'd like to shoot me an email.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll have those all in the show notes to make it a little bit easier on all the listeners, and that way we can connect with you and learn about all the amazing things that you've done. And I've also checked out the newsletter, so I think it is great for a lot of people to follow. So, well, thank you very much, Brian. This has been great. I do have one more question, even though you've already kind of mentioned a little bit of advice for entrepreneurs, but I do have one more question before we go. So, what advice do you have for aspiring leaders and entrepreneurs looking to make an impact in the tech industry?
So is this, I've noticed, I've listened to some of your others, you always have that surprise question at the end.
I do.
Like
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
So,
one last nugget before we go.
So what advice do I have for aspiring entrepreneurs and leaders? I'm going to say is one thing that I really love to focus on is seek wisdom. Right. This being an entrepreneur can be very lonely. And, I love some of the interviews you've done with people, and, you can hear that theme, and I can so relate to these entrepreneurs. And, when they talk about, the fear of making payroll, and not knowing how to raise money, and all the things that, I didn't know how to do when I first started, right? But had to figure it out. And the only way that I figured it out was to seek wisdom. It's like I always use the Sully example. I was, my last job, I was flying like 200,000 miles a year on airplanes. And I always took great comfort when I got on board and I would see the pilot with a little gray hair, because I figured if we have to land this baby on the Hudson, I want to know that he can do it. Right.
Right.
So, it's not, and by the way, I am a great believer in reverse mentoring as much as I am about mentoring. So I'm a great believer that we can learn so much from the youth of today. They bring a different perspective on stuff. And I've always tried to do that in my companies, is I tried to put reverse mentoring in place. So I'm always about learning from other people. And in the case of entrepreneurship, seek that wisdom, whether it's somebody older than you or somebody who's just been there and done that. And that's why I really, when you look at my aspirations, is to help those future business leaders, those future entrepreneurs, because it can be a very fearful and a very lonely place. And and you need people in your corner.
Mm-hmm. No, that is incredible advice. I think that's a big part too, is that, people seem to be a little bit afraid to reach out to mentors, especially early on, right? They think they can just do it on their own. They don't need advice, but there are tons of people out there like you, Brian, who believe that you're not looking to be paid to give advice. You're there too because you've done it. You want to help people out just from, being genuine, and wanting to help people succeed in life. And I think that's incredible, so thank you for doing that. And I thank anyone who does help people along the way because it makes the path that much easier. And so what's the point of struggling as much as you are when you have people such as yourself?
Absolutely. And, people have said to me, wow, I'm really surprised at how approachable you are. And
Yeah.
I say, well, what makes me any more special than you?
Mm,
Right. I mean, we're all special. And
mhm.
the fact of the matter is just the fact I've just been at it longer
Right.
and I've had some successes. And, but look, we're all in the race together. And quite frankly, we all need to help each other to be successful. And when people get lost in their success or lost in their ego, that drives me crazy. So
Mhm.
even in my culture of building my own businesses is, people know they got to check their ego at the door. We're all here to succeed together as a team and work together. And that's the same thing, the way I view it with talking to aspiring entrepreneurs, because I've been there and I know how difficult it can be.
Right. Well, thank you, Brian. This has been incredible. I really appreciate you taking time to spend with me, the listeners, and share your advice. And I really look forward to the success of Qredible.
Thank you very much, and it's great. I think you got a great podcast, and you're doing important work by helping to really educate and aspire entrepreneurs through business leaders. So, thanks for what you do.